Rich and BDM here with the day one wrap. It's done, it's dusted, 8 rounds, 5 of standard, 3 of draft. BDM, 2 people, undefeated, perfect records. Who are they?
Ben Stark of the USA. We did a draft tack with him.
Indeed we did.
He was not very confident coming out of that first draft that he was going to emerge with a perfect record after going 5-0 in standard, but he did.
Indeed.
It's sort of a hard-working infect deck, we'll call it.
Yes, they gained full value for each of them. Generally they sat there as being 1-1s and 2-1s, and then the turn that he killed them, they suddenly became 8-7s for the most part.
Right.
A bit of Untamed Mind and all the pump spells, Mirror and Metal and so on.
And then also joining him tomorrow in a likely first round feature match will be Naoki Nakada from Japan, a Japanese player I'm not very familiar with actually.
No, and interestingly, we've sort of, one of our storylines over the last couple of years has been Japan slightly falling away from position of dominance. Of course, there'll be no Japanese Player of the Year this year, but 4 of the top 16 overnight are from Japan. They've had a good day. Interesting to see how that works. Now, a bunch of players at 21, 7 and 1, and you can see the full standings, of course, on magicthegathering.com. But BDM, a huge ton of North American talent in the sort of 7-1 bracket.
Sure, just staying on the continent of North America, you see Patrick Chapin, Tom Martell, Luis Scott Vargas, last year's Rookie of the Year hopeful, Christian Calcano, Conrad Kolos, U.S. national team member, all sitting at 21, just below them at 19 points, so 1 draw off of that pace. You see Pro Tour Amsterdam champion Paul Rietzel, and another former U.S. national team member, Billy Postlethwaite.
Billy Postlethwaite, indeed. So a whole ton of North American talent, but what about from the rest of the world? On the 7 and 1s, we said Japan were in good shape. Listen to this. Still the reigning Player of the Year, Yuya Watanabe, for about another 36 hours or so. He's 7 and 1. And so is the 2006 Player of the Year, who won his title here in Paris, Shooter Yasuoka. One other guy to mention, he's Brazilian. I'll give you one guess after 7 top 8s in 25 attempts. Who's right there again?
Is it
Paulo
Vitor Damarosa? Yes, it is. Yes.
It's Paulo Vitor Damarosa. So that's the sort of 21s.
A safe bet, by the way. If you ever find yourself in our position and you're doing like a day one intro and like, who's your pick for the top 8? You want to just windmill slam a Gabriel Nassif or a Paulo Vitor Damarosa because they're 1 in 5 to do it.
Yeah,
you have a 20% chance of looking smart.
That's true, which is more than most of us can usually generate. All right, now. We've got so many players here. We had 483 players start out. That means 172 have made it to 5 and 3 or better and will therefore come back. And amongst them, one of our largest contingents ever of Hall of Famers coming back for day 2.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a handful of people. I mean, Raphael Levy, Frank Karsten, Gabriel Nassif, Camille Cornelissen.
Yeah.
I mean, how exciting is it to see Camille Cornelissen? Well, not very exciting to watch Camille play, but it's exciting that he's here.
Yeah, it's probably generating more excitement trying to say his name.
And of course, Brian Kepler.
Yes. Who, I don't know, I think he's going to be a bit disappointed because he's sitting at 5 and 3, and I suspect that he felt he was in a better position, in better shape, physically and mentally, for one of the European trips, because he's had a couple of issues in long distance travel over the last 18 months or so.
Maybe he can just do the opposite of what he did at Worlds. He can get his X and 3 out of the way early, and then he can just run the table tomorrow.
This is entirely possible. So tomorrow we come back with the reverse, 3 rounds of draft, 5 rounds of standard. And when we talk about standard, what's the shape of the metagame? Well, that's very hard to tell, but what we did, we just said, let's suppose this was it now, the top 8. What would the top 8 kind of look like in deck terms?
So just looking through the top 8, you've got at the top table the updated Kago with swords. We did a deck tech with Brad Nelson, who's playing the same deck that Ben Stark is undefeated with. You have a less hawkish blue-white deck in the hands of Nakada. Valakut deck, a Tezzeret deck. This is a Grixis Tezzeret, very similar to the deck that you did a deck tech with Guillaume Matignon for.
That's right.
Conrad Kolos is playing Valakut. It's just a, just like I'm going to take the best deck.
Straight down the line, best deck.
Yep. We see a Tempered Steel deck.
And that's Kentaro Ino. That's the other Japanese player currently in a top 8 slot, as it were, at the halfway mark.
There's a Japanese take on the Tezzerator deck with Yuya Watanabe playing Tezzerator. And then eking into that last spot is Victor Lemois with Boros.
Yeah, Vincent
Lemois, sorry.
Yeah. That's all right. You got the second name right, which let's face it,
the
much
more challenging one.
A much more challenging one from Belgium, of course, Vincent.
I only play tested the second leg of that.
Yeah, that seems fair. So that is the shape of things as they stand. Plenty of decks around. About the only deck that seemed to kind of melt away was Kuldotha Red. Did you see much of that?
I did not see much of the top tables. Hall of Famer Ole Rade was someone who was playing that deck. He knew he wanted to play it. Actually, prior to the release of Mirrodin Besieged, he was like, oh, I like this deck. I know some people have written about it. He was doing a little research into it, and then he's like, and then Mirrodin Besieged came out. He's like, I already know this deck, and it just actually became good.
Yep.
And it's a deck that people were really prepared for this event. And I think it was a deck that was on everyone's radar. It was one of the first decks that people talked about when they're like, well, how will my deck deal with Kuldotha Red? And I think everybody had a plan for that deck.
How will I ensure I don't lose to this blazing fast aggro strangeness?
So, I mean, we see people playing with Sylvok life staffs. Like
+1, +0, and gain 3 life when things die.
Right, so basically I'm just going to play a parade of,
parade of awful.
Parade of hawks and put a staff on them and gain 3 and trade with your guy. And,
So, that is roughly where we stand in Standard. We come back for Draft first thing, then Standard down the stretch. In case you didn't know, it's day 2 of Magic Weekend tomorrow, and then we have the largest event in Magic history, Grand Prix Paris. You have 24 hours left to register. Well, that's if you're watching this now. 24 hours-ish.
That guy over there.
That guy over there. You have 24 hours, my friend, to register for GP Paris. He's still trying to win the Pro Tour, by the way, but we'll see what happens with that. Also, you have no time left to register for the smallest event in the history of Magic, which turns out to be 2 players going toe-to-toe for the Player of the Year. Brad Nelson, Guillaume Matignon, 3 a.m. Eastern Time. Set your watches, whatever time you are around the world. Do not miss history being made with the historian.
It's a pay-per-view bout. The price you have to pay is waking up at 3 a.m.
This seems fair. Unless, of course, you live on the West Coast, in which case it's midnight. You're still up anyway. You can't lose. And we would love to see you both tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, as Magic Weekend at Paris 2011 just keeps on getting better. Until we see you tomorrow for day 2, for Brian David Marshall, I'm Rich Hagon saying bye.